welcome to the Art of Costume Podcast. I'm Elizabeth Joy Glass.
And I'm Spencer Cullen, Alice Cullen's ex-husband.
You know, that tracks.
I am so excited because today is our season finale of season 4. Can you believe
season
it?
4. No, I can't. I can't believe we've been doing this long.
Yeah, the season started with Barbenheimer.
I know.
But we are here, and as we mentioned last week, you know, we always like to do something fun for the season finale.
Yes.
More like a gift to ourselves, honestly. We like to revisit something amazing with someone amazing. And this week, I think we kept up with that theme. It was a fun one.
Spencer, what do we have in store for the audience this week?
Well, today we revisited the Art of Costume podcast classic. We're talking about 2008's Twilight with Kristen Stewart and Robert Pattinson. If you haven't heard our original episode we did a couple years ago with our friends Avijah Kumar and Chloe White, and it was lots of fun. But back then we talked about how we really wanted to ask Wendy Chuck some of the questions we had. And today we're making that dream come true because Wendy Chuck is in the studio today to talk about Twilight.
I am so excited to start talking to her to get some of these questions answered, Spencer. But before we do that, do you want to give a little summary for those who might be unfamiliar with Twilight?
Twilight was directed by Catherine Hardwicke. In Twilight, Bella Swan decides to go and live with her father in Forks, Washington for the remainder of her high school years. She doesn't know she's making a decision that will change the rest of her life and lead her into the world of the supernatural. And that is Twilight. We're talking about the first Twilight, by the way. The one that changed culture, changed the world.
Changed vampire movies as we know them. This is kind of like the same time period. We get all these teen heartthrob vampires. We get True Blood.
Right. all the good stuff. And no person to do it than Wendy Chuck, of course, who already had quite a stint in the teen throb movies.
Yes. And before we get to our interview, let's meet our costume designer, Wendy Chuck. You will know her work from Nebraska, The Descendants, San Andreas, The Romanoffs, Hoobie Halloween, The Holdovers, and her upcoming project that is coming out next year.
Yeah, May 2025.
Disney's Lilo and Stitch.
Ooh, I'm so excited for that one. That's going to be... I mean, I love Lilo and Stitch. And if any Disney film was going to get a live action makeover, I kind of would like to see Lilo and Stitch to see all of that Hawaiian costumes on the big screen and all their detail.
And so we can get these questions answered. Spencer, should we head over to interview Wendy Chuck?
I'm very excited. I really want to talk about the baseball scene and Edward's Peacoat. And Elizabeth, I think it's time we get to the bottom of that prom look.
Absolutely.
Hi, I'm Dan, who does all the magic behind the scenes. I wanted to say thank you, and if you want to support the show even farther, go to tpublic.com/user/theartofcostume, where you can buy a couple variations of our logo on t-shirts, mugs, and stickers. Also, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And if you're an audio listener, leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast. Now, back to the show.
We are so excited to finally welcome to the podcast after talking about her and her work for so long. Please welcome costume designer Wendy Chuck. Hey, Wendy.
Welcome.
Hello, Spencer and Elizabeth. Hi.
So Elizabeth and I grew up during the era of these films coming out. You know, Elizabeth was a ferocious book reader. I was going to the midnight premieres. So we are definitely like that generation. So obviously, it's a very popular book. So can we just get into the preparation? I assume that you must have read these books in the beginning. I don't know how you couldn't.
I did not read them when they came out, and you became a fan. I read them in preparation for an interview for the job. So yeah, I did a quick read and marked out everything in the book that related to a mood, a costume, an idea, and just quickly absorbed them and just went with that.
And, we love talking about the research of costumes on this podcast. It's probably what we spend most of our time doing. Twilight isn't your typical vampire film, so I'm assuming you're not, most vampire films like, oh, I was watching Bram Stoker's Dracula and Interview with a Vampire. What did your research look like?
Yeah, it looked like mysterious, moody landscapes and lots of jewelry, magical things. Yeah, it was more like magical things and then teen clothes. And I had already designed and been probably pigeonholed into designing a lot of teen movies, high school and prom and such. So kind of had a grounding in that world. But matching that with what I thought was a magical world of Stephanie's creation.
It feels kind of like a natural progression.
Yeah.
And just talking about the production, from what we've read, it sounds like the budget was not a very big budget for the film altogether. Was that a challenge that you all faced?
Yeah, it's always a challenge. It's always a challenge. And plus, it was not in LA where we were living. So we had some time to prep in Los Angeles and then move to Portland and make everything happen at the last minute. It seemed very fast and furious at the time in hindsight. But, compared to contemporary budgets and particularly what I'm working on now, I dare say it seemed generous.
Oh, okay.
Budgets are shrinking.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you all do any shopping when you got over to the area or?
Yes, for what was available in Portland, but I think most of it was prepped in LA. Most of the shopping for the Cullen family and Bella was done here, and then there were some local characters that were created from what was available there.
It's very obvious that director Catherine Hardwicke, she had a very clear visual vision for this movie. So, what was your collaboration with her like?
As I've mentioned before on several interviews and podcasts, that fast and furious gathering of ideas happened in the fitting rooms in Universal Studios where we were shopping. She was very involved, very involved. I mean, sometimes offering her own clothes, her own pants, her own belts, her own ideas. I think, like all of us, we always infuse some of ourselves into characters or movies. I know I do. And I think Catherine had a pretty clear vision of what she wanted straight on. I mean, she came from an art directing world and a production designing world. So, a very strong visual sense, Catherine. So, sometimes it was difficult and sometimes it was easily collaborative. And, we're often in place to serve the director's ideas. So, you have to find a way to either win an argument or be happy with where you land.
Yeah.
It's the art of negotiation.
Yeah.
That's very true. And I would say personally, one of my favorite characters visually is Bella, who is clearly the heart of our story. And we meet her. She lives in Arizona, very sunny, dry climate. And then we go to Forks, Washington, pretty much the opposite of that. Can you talk a little bit about your philosophy behind Bella and how you informed her costume?
Well, Arizona, in comparison to, look at the climates, they're exact opposites. So we have a young lady coming from a warm, dry, sunny climate to a dark, moody, gray, rainy climate. So, we always saw her and the way she's written, she's a fish out of water. She's finding her way. She doesn't fit in, but she comes from a very kind of grounded, earth-toned place and then lands in lands in a wet, rainy, cold place. And, it was useful to have that as an arc in her clothes, starting with the warm tones and, thrifted stuff to, eventually embracing the colors as you have on the screen right now of, Edward's world of the grays and the blues and the more dark colors, moody. But she was always moody, really.
Yeah. That's very, very true. Let's also talk a little bit about talking about Moody, the Cullens. Honestly, them walking into the cafeteria, that's something I don't think I'll ever forget. That is a scene in film that is permanently burned into my mind. But the costumes really help tell their story to the audience before they even start talking. Can you talk a little bit about what you were thinking for them?
Yeah, well, I went into my initial interview with Catherine, and I think Melissa Rosenberg was also in the room. And, it was in the days where you do boards rather than, it wasn't as digital as we are now. So I, done my cut and paste of boards, and I presented an idea that instead of doing the traditional vampires of black, that we, maybe they were white. And I always had the idea that they were frozen in time. So that's how I approached the Cullen family and the vampire family as frozen in time. So it was icy and cool tones, and this is what you see represented. I mean, of course, I did have to lean into black, but I didn't want to do them all in black. So there's the whites and the grays. So it's kind of like it's like a black and white photo if you were to
Okay.
take a gradation of black to white, like in the gray scale.
Yeah.
I love that.
But I also threw the blues in as well. So Alice is in that. I think she probably tended to more blue than others, and then Edward eventually into blue.
I love that. I love the idea of a black and white photo. And
Yeah.
to me, the Cullens are very cohesive and unique, but the Nomad characters are unique but not cohesive because they have this more like rock star quality. And just as I became an adult, I realized for all this time I couldn't figure out why James was shirtless and then how he ended up with the jacket. And then I realized, they're picking up pieces of other people's clothes. And then just last night, as I was preparing, trying to find a Kiss Me I'm Irish shirt, I'm like, where did that come from? And I found it on the guy that they killed, which I thought was genius. So can you take us back to the Nomad characters? They're so fun.
Yeah. Well, again, they were, a day or two of just Catherine and I trying lots of things. And she'd already said, "Oh yeah, they should be rock stars," and I love this image you have of them moving into frame toward, because it's
badass. Yeah,
it really worked. But I always loved Laurent. So to me, I saw him as regal and from way back in history, and he's mixed his 70s jacket with his I think that's Georgian, early 1800s look. And he eventually lost. He lost his undershirt eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, James with his, he has collector's things on his belt. And and they all have. So, we're assuming that Victoria killed a sheep and had to have I guess, an emblematic of a kill. And, again, Catherine loved her pants, and she brought in those elements of that's a Mexican T-shirt, Mexican logo T-shirt that we had to embellish and multiply at some point. So there you have it. I mean, it was a collaboration and a collection at Western, running into the stacks, pulling out anything that looked period or badass or sexy that kind of worked. And, at some point, I think we were having James in sweatpants. And, that didn't work. And yeah, so it was, the perfect storm of a collaboration, probably.
Yeah, it's just way too much fun.
It's time to talk about Edward. The way Robert Pattinson embodied this character is iconic. Can you tell us about your approach for Edward and your collaboration with Robert?
Yeah. Robert, I think, was very conscious of how he was going to look in this movie. Maybe he always is, but it's the only time I've worked with him. And he had specific ideas about fit and where things landed on his body, and which were all very useful. And then with all jobs, once you get a template for a character, you can kind of run with it. So I think it was American Apparel was around at the time. So, a lot of his T-shirts were from American Apparel because they fitted him right, and they fitted him in the right way and landed at the right length for him. And that coat was something else. It is actually, and I'm doing that right now. Finding the right coat can be so useful, and it's always a key piece. And I can't tell you the number of times I've had questions about these two coats for these two characters.
Yeah, well, that was my next question, Wendy. I mean, it's the Peacoat heard around the world. I got a Peacoat, even though I lived in the desert, so I never even really got to wear it. Elizabeth's brother, I think, got a Peacoat. Like, we all got the Peacoat.
Yeah, me and my mom brought my brother a Peacoat because he had to go to a Halloween party and didn't know what to do. So me and my mom were like, well, you could be Edward. So we got him a Peacoat, and then he wore it for the next 10 years.
Well, they're classic. I mean, Peacoats are wonderful. I love them. And it not the last time I've used a Peacoat either. I mean, It seems like every movie there's a Peacoat. This one is special because of the fabric and the design with the one, I don't know what that's called, storm flap on one side. And I mean, it just works. The texture works. It works to highlight the paleness of his face. And, that was something we were always conscious of. We wanted him to look pale without looking like he had makeup on or a lot of makeup on. So that was something that we worked together on. And yes, her coat, I believe, has become legendary too. And recently surfaced photo that I found has revealed the maker of the coat because it was a mystery for all these 15 years.
We saw it, and we're definitely going to share it on YouTube, or at least I saw Elizabeth on Instagram, so we got to share that. It's the mystery's been revealed.
That.
Yeah, it's such iconic pieces. I mean, even the glasses that Edward wears, I believe they're Ray-Bans. I got Ray-Bans almost immediately and wore them every day, even though I was in middle school, high school, and it was cloudy out. So it's just so funny that these pieces have such longevity.
I have to ask, where did you get your Peacoats from?
Oh, I mean, probably just found some gray Peacoat at Macy's or something. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
It probably wasn't accurate.
We got my brothers at H&M. It was definitely they're like, oh, let's catch this trend.
Did they knock it off completely?
Not completely. It was just different enough.
Yeah. Because I know pretty soon after the movie was released, I think they were on eBay for $125. They were knockoffs. Yeah. They were a Chinese knockoff of the coat. I never touched one or saw one, so I don't know how they compare, but that's what things yeah, that's another podcast, Spencer.
Yeah, we've talked about on this podcast plenty.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but we'll happily talk about that any old time. But pay costume designers what they're worth. Anyways, let's talk about a scene that we're very excited to talk about. And I think we get the most messages about this scene in particular. You can't listen to a Muse song today without thinking about Vampire Baseball. I was actually just in Washington going on a hike, and it got slightly cloudy. And everyone's saying, are you guys ready to play Vampire Baseball? It's just so iconic. I love the costumes for the Cullens in this scene because, as Elizabeth pointed out to me when we talked about this the first time, they all kind of have like a retro style to them, almost like they are kind of stuck in that time period that they came from, and that kind of bleeds into their baseball uniforms, in my opinion. Was that intentional?
Yeah. Again, I mean, that happened in that fitting. I mean, I tried, we went and put on real vintage things from them. And then, except for, Alice has, I think we recreated that. But Rosalie's was, based on some vintage pants and that look, but modernized for her character. I mean, I think I got to say, I think I nailed that. It really works for their characters, or their own style.
Yeah, it's way too much fun, and I love Bella's scarves too. It's such a big, wonderful scarf. I really like that one.
Yeah.
Do you remember settling on that piece in particular?
No, I think that was last minute. I think that happened like on the day. I don't even remember where that was from. I mean, I know her mittens I got from a British knitter, and had a lot of questions about those early in the day. I don't remember where the scarf came from.
I have to imagine it was probably pretty cold on set though too. Like I imagine
that was a day from hell. That was cold, damp, miserable, and they're not wearing many clothes, so it was bitterly cold and rain. Yeah.
So the scarf might have been more technical than as imagined.
It might have been. I need to help her keep warm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was, the set was a long way from the green room for them, which was warm, but then I had to, jump on a gator and get to the set 5 minutes away on a dirt road on a gator. It was, yeah, that's what we do.
I also loved Bella's prom dress and them as a couple in this scene. They just looked so perfect. And I've always particularly liked Bella's because it felt so modern to me at the time and so of the style of the time. Can you talk a little bit about how you came up with these looks, especially because it is a little different from the book?
Yeah. Well, it's all practical problem solving in the moment sometimes, what we do. I don't remember if I had other things for her, but the moment I found that dress was, okay, this feels right. This feels like what she would, it wasn't like the other girls' prom dresses.
Yeah.
It was more individual and, again, leaning into Edward's world with the color. And, the cardigan, as I've said many times, was a solution to the problem of the cold and damp. I mean, again, that was a miserable, cold event. And I think we cut up, a thermal underneath that and for the exterior scenes. And she's got, thermal leggings underneath that dress too. So, sometimes a design will be built around a practical solution. And I think this one was one of those, a last minute find. I thought the dress was perfect. I don't remember having other dresses. Maybe there was one or two, but just when I found that one, I mean, that was it for me. And then it was like, oh my God, I've got to keep them warm. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? They'll die. And, we had a lot of notes from the producers, especially when we went to La Push. It was like, we knew we had to shoot, but how do we make it happen on, with actors on a really cold day? So anyway, that was a vintage find. I went to all the vintage and thrift stores in Portland looking for something that I could put over her. And it wasn't going to be an overcoat. That would be wrong. It wasn't going to be, it was like, what is this thing? Like, so sometimes you don't know what you're looking for, but you're looking for the answer to the problem. And that to me was the answer. And, it was a long grandma cardigan. Some people still think it is, but I think it works. And, around, so I cut it shorter like a bolero and, gave it some shape and then reattached the sequin design so it worked with the curve of the bolero. And there it is. Solution.
I love that.
I've really grown to like it. But Edward also looks really quite expensive. Like he knows how to do prom. Maybe he's done it before, so he knows how to look good.
Well, that's a Gucci suit.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. And I don't remember the brand of the shirt, but, yes, he cuts a fine figure. And, that was another thing, the Cullen family had, bottomless pits of money. You match that with a movie budget and, so, this is the moment where we can see that he's got money to buy a great fitting suit.
I wasn't going to ask this because we don't have a picture, but someone texted me last night, said you have to ask Wendy about Victoria sneaking into prom. She looked quite rich and fabulous. She might have upstaged everyone and she wasn't even there.
Yeah. Yes. I mean,
was that the same coat or did she wear or she just made it look nicer that day?
It was the same one. And I don't know how we came up with the color for her because, that was shopped in Portland and it's limited.
Mm-hmm.
So, what was it that stands her apart from everybody else? So I don't know where the idea for that color came, if that was me, if that was just what was available, if that was a suggestion from Catherine. I don't really remember, but it worked with her hair.
Yeah.
And yes, and it made sense that, she throw her dead sheep coat over her.
Yeah.
If it's not broke, why fix it?
Yeah. But I also how the other characters turned out at the prom too. Like, the friends.
Oh yeah. I love Jessica in that scene.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. It seems perfect for her.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Such a good one.
Wendy, this has been such a joy. We're so happy to speak with you about Twilight, and it came out over 15 years ago now, which that feels crazy to say. It doesn't feel like that long ago, but looking back on the journey you have been on since then, what has this film meant to you? Did you ever think all these years later you'd go to Comic-Con and be talking about this film?
Not at all. And I didn't think I'd be going to Forks 2 years in a row as I have. So I was there and they invited me last year and I love it. Was my first time up in Washington State and I loved it. And, the fandom is amazing. There's, the age range runs from, the gamut.
Yeah.
And there's such a fun community. So that was really eye-opening for me because I've never known a movie to have so much life after its release ever. So that's new to me. And now I've been embraced by the community. So I got invited back this year and I didn't have that much to do, but just be there and be present and enjoy. And they have a costume museum there.
Oh, I've heard of this.
Yes. And so I'm being invited to be on the board of the museum, and we are starting to talk about what can we do to raise money? What can we do we would like to move the collection into a new building. We would like to buy some more items. It's got life. It's got legs.
Yeah.
More than I would even expect. So it's been fun.
Well, Elizabeth lives in LA now, so we definitely are able to make that trip together. But let us know so we can help make this exhibition happen too, if it goes into a bigger space.
Yeah. Okay. We'll be in touch.
Well, this was so much fun. And at the end of all of our podcasts, Wendy, we like to play a little game called One Costume Rule Them All. Are you willing to play with us?
Sure.
All right, let's give it a go. Hit it, Daniel.
The one costume to rule them all.
All right. So the first time we played, Elizabeth, I picked Alice's baseball costume But in the 2 years since we've played, I think I've converted to Edward's gray peacoat because I realized the impact it had on my life when I was in high school and how I wanted to be Edward and bought his glasses and everything. So I have to pick that one.
Honestly, Spencer, it's mine as well this time around. Just because, like, when I think about this movie in particular, that is the first look that comes to mind.
Your pick last year or 2 years ago was the Kiss Me I'm Irish shirt.
I know. Because it's brilliant. It's funny. I love that she just took it from that poor man, and ran with it. But Edward, that's who you think about from this movie, personally.
Right. Wendy, what is your one costume rule them all at the moment?
Yeah, I'm going to have to swing with both of you this year's choice. I mean, I think it has to be Edward.
Yeah.
It does rule them all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Enough said.
Yeah. And that was the first one that I got like the many emails of inquiries about. So I would have to say it rules.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It defines a generation. It's really cool. This has been so much fun. Wendy, thank you so much for talking with us. And hopefully you'll join us again soon because you have some new stuff coming out soon that we're very excited about, aka Lilo and Stitch. That must have been a lot of fun.
Yes. It was yes. Hawaii was fun. It was a grueling shoot for several reasons, but we made it through and we finished shooting physical production March this year. The strikes kind of got in the way. And I can't wait to see some trailers with the characters in.
Yeah, with the costumes.
Yes. I mean, all we've seen is Stitch right now. So I'm holding my breath for the next one where we actually see Lilo. Probably Lilo and Stitch and the rest. So
you're so funny you say that because I saw the trailer came out the other day and I was like, oh my God, this is it. And it was just Stitch. And I was like, all right, well, not what I wanted, but yeah. Well, I'm hoping it stands up. I mean, you never know until you see the movie. I mean the costumes, not the movie. And I think they will. Well, we're so excited. We can't wait to reach out to you. Costume designer Wendy Chuck, thank you so much for joining us on the season finale. This has been so fun.
Thank you.
Thank you, Spencer and Elizabeth.
Spencer, that was so much fun.
Oh, so much fun. Wendy is so lovely. I think I brought it up on podcast before, but this whole thing came about because I met her at San Diego Comic-Con in between panels. Mm-hmm. She was getting ready to do hers, and I did mine the day before. And me and Phil Boutte were writing some of the questions, and I got to sit down and chat with Wendy. And I was like, oh my gosh, such a big fan. I have 1,000,002 questions, but we're only here for like 15 minutes. Like, I would love for you to come on. And she's so receptive and so sweet. And you could tell that she just really cares about Twilight and all the Twihards out there and just really appreciates how iconic this film has been, even though at the time when they were doing it, no one thought that was going to happen. So we're so appreciative to Wendy Chuck for being on a podcast. That was so fun. I love talking about all of it.
I know. I love that we got her to play one costume to rule them all.
Yeah, I didn't think I'm always nervous to ask that question, but she was ready to go.
She was. Spencer, what is your Stitch rating for it?
That's a real interesting question. See, like if I would have gave it a Stitch rating when I first saw it when I was a kid, I probably would have been like, oh, this is like a 3 or a 4, 3.5. But just seeing how iconic Twilight's been and how integral it's been to like my life, the soundtrack, the inspiration of the clothing and the way it changed people's careers, the way it changed vampire culture in general. So I'm going to give it a 4.5 because obviously it's corny in many ways, but I love it for that. So it's hard to say it's not a bad movie. It's a good movie.
It is. I'm right there with you. 4.5. As a lover of the books, are there things I wish they had changed or done differently? Absolutely. is there some writing I will never get over? Like, hold on, Spider Monkey. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're totally right. Like, this kind of like defined us as a generation almost.
Right.
Like, millennials were very sulky and moody. But, you know, when it comes down to it, we're ready to have a good time.
Yeah. Two Stitch rating movies don't inspire generations like that.
No,
you know?
they don't. They don't.
It is what it is. It's 4.5 feels very good to me.
Yeah.
Well, we would love to hear your one costumes to rule them all out there listening. So make sure you email us at theartofcostume@gmail.com. And of course, follow us on Instagram and TikTok at The Art of Costume Pod. And let us know what your favorite costume was. Twilight, I'm sure, changed your life like it changed ours, whether you like to admit it or not. So might as well speak up now. Elizabeth, that wraps up this season. But I'm excited to say that we're going to be back next year. Just growing our costume design family and talking about more great costumes. We're going to be in a studio in the new year.
I know. I'm very excited.
Very excited about. It's almost done being built. We just need a little bit more time, but we'll be ready to go in January. Likely, our first episode sounds like it might be coming out January 14th.
So everybody, mark your calendars and get ready for the start of the Art of Costume podcast season 5.
It's been a year, but excited to make more memories with you and Daniel and everyone listening next year.
Absolutely.
Bye, everyone.